Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple, who had reached the tomb first, also went inside. He saw and believed. They still did not understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. Then the disciples went back to where they were staying. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb. She saw 2 angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said. "I don't know where they have put him." At this, she turned round and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned towards him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Altogether, Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord," and she told them that he had said these things to her. The good news of Christ.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Thank you so much, Sonny. Beautiful. I want to offer a brief reflection on this amazing day, the most important day in the church calendar. We need to understand where these people were at that we've just read about in this passage of Scripture. Peter, who apparently was a faster runner than John, or was it John? Who outran who? Oh yeah, John. See, now you got to know who was writing this. It was John. And he was also the one Jesus loved, because he tells us, right? So he tells us that he outran Peter and that he was the one Jesus loved. Oh boy, no wonder they fought, right? Anyway, we have to understand with them and with Mary, who was entrusted with the first visible evidence that Jesus was bodily alive. Not a ghost, not an apparition, not a spirit guide, but a body. The same body that he'd been in his earthly life, but it had been transformed. We have to understand that there was no less than 10 would-be messiahs within that generation that had ended up on the same kind of cross that Jesus did. At least 10. 10 revolutions, 10 revolts, 10 violent rough uprisings trying to overthrow the Romans. So this was a familiar story to these people. For would-be messiahs to end up on a cross, it wasn't unusual for Jesus to end up on a cross. They were used to seeing would-be messiahs ending up on a cross. And in Galilee, there was a community close called Sepphoris, which was a Roman settlement and colony, where Joseph and Jesus probably worked, and they say where Mary was born, where one day thousands were lined up on the road crucified because of a bloody uprising. So this was not unusual. It was not unusual for a Messiah to end up on a cross. Each time their followers saw their Messiah on the cross, they realized they'd followed the wrong guy. And this was the shocking realization of the followers of Jesus. After his horrifying and traumatizing crucifixion, that gruesome spectacle, naked, bloody, dying in agony on a cross, they realized they had just followed another false, failed Messiah. And so, I'm talking about getting into their heads right now. This is where they were at. They were resigned to returning to the lives that they'd known before they had made this terrible mistake. But the resurrection changed everything. This whole weekend, Easter, Good Friday, Good Saturday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Sunday is actually a package where each day of this weekend is crucial to the story. You can't take one part out. It's all, you have Good Friday, Holy Saturday, Easter Sunday. Good Friday is part of the story. In a world of indescribable tragedy, pain, and heartbreak, including ours, our own, that we all carry today in various ways, Good Friday tells us that God suffers with us. Holy Saturday, yesterday, which is when we had Liz's memorial over at Creekside, beautiful event, great turnout. Holy Saturday tells us that regardless of what you're suffering right now, your story isn't finished. The story isn't finished. Holy Saturday is that in-between time between tragedy and hope, where we live most of our lives. And Easter Sunday tells us that, got to step back from the mic, love wins. And as Christians, we not only believe in life after death, but we also believe in life after death. What does that mean? Is that even though when we die, we're temporarily separated from our bodies, our hope is that what happened to Jesus on Resurrection Sunday is what will happen to us. We will be reconciled with our bodies. We will be resurrected in the renewal of all things. This means then that everything we do in these bodies of ours, with these hands, these feet, those cute little noses, every part of you, nothing is in vain. Not everything matters. As Paul wrote, nothing we do in this body is in vain or meaningless. Everything that we do from love, in love, out of love, we will take into our next life. It is never lost. Never lost. Into God's new world where swords will be turned into plowshares, spears into pruning hooks, and the nations will not learn or practice war anymore. As Henry Nouwen said, we have two goals in life. The first is to learn that we are the beloved. And how many know that's hard work? That takes a long time. It's called learning to walk by faith. Learning that you're the beloved. That's the message of Good Friday. That there's nothing you could ever do or not do to make God stop loving you or make God love you any more than God already does. And the second objective, and this guy was a genius, by the way. He had multiple doctorates and university professor. You know what the second goal in life is? Say thank you. To give back as you've been loved, to love. Oh. So regardless of what you do, if you're an artist or a poet or a painter or taking care of kids or taking care of an aging parent, or you're building houses, or you're crunching numbers as an accountant, or teaching school kids, or learning in school, it all matters. And whatever you do in love, because you're loved and out of love, is eternal. It lasts forever. But the victory was won on Good Friday. Jesus was a different Messiah. He didn't grasp for power or lead a revolt against the Romans. In fact, he said, love your enemies and forgive them. And he showed true power. And the psalmist said this, one thing God has spoken, two things I have heard, that power belongs to you, God, and with you, Lord, is unfailing love, and you will reward everyone according to what they have done. And I've never understood that verse, because he said one thing and then two, and then he ends up saying three things. I don't get it. How many have read that one and you go, what? It is interesting that the psalmist puts power and love in the same phrase and in the same person. In our human experience, they're often antithetical. You either love people, but you give up power, or you grasp for power and you give up love. But in God, in the cross, they come together. As one former Vancouver resident and great prophet who grew up only a few blocks away from here said, his name was Jimi Hendrix, by the way. Dan drives right by the memorabilia house and is cycling. Jimi Hendrix said this is so powerful. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace.